Hello and welcome to our webinar on leading your teams to renew. My name's Joe Nagel, Innovation Director at the Innovation Beehive, and I'm delighted to be joined by Angela, People and Innovation Director at the Innovation Beehive. I'm really excited about this webinar today because for the last 6 months or so, we've been regularly talking about the roadmap through uncertainty, which Angela is going to talk about later. But what's exciting is that the renew phase is the fourth stage, the final stage of the roadmap through uncertainty. So it's great to be sort of saying hello tomorrow to the future as we begin to think about how we can renew our organizations and our teams and move on towards the future. But just a little bit about the Innovation Beehive, if I can have the next slide, Angela. So we are the Innovation Beehive. We accelerate the potential of people, organizations, leaders, and ideas. We operate in 3 spheres. So we do innovation training and innovation consulting, particularly with a focus on people challenges. So employee value propositions, organizational culture, recruitment, retention, and things like that. So any sticky problems that you have in the HR space, we're really the people to talk to. Organizational culture, we focus on that. So we work on customer service cultures, we work on purpose, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, we work on values and how to bring them to life in the organization. And then leadership, we work on leadership development, and Angela's going to share our model for leadership in a moment. We run modules, we deliver online, we deliver face-to-face when we're allowed to. And we support leaders to become their best selves and to emerge as the future leaders for the organization. And you can see on the screen there just the range of clients we work with, global, national, and local. But now I think I'm going to hand over to you, Angela, to start us on the content. So straight over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Hello, everyone. As Joe said, we have been talking over the last few webinars and the last few months about the roadmap through uncertainty. And this was our way of putting some structure to how do we get through these disruptive times. And we saw it as something that came in 4 phases. So there was the stabilize phase where, you know, we were coping with the here and now. At the beginning of lockdown, which seems such a long time ago, how are we going to cope with what's going on? Right, we need to just get our feet firmly on the ground, look after ourselves, and just, you know, it was all about survival. And then as things moved on, it was more about the sustain phase. So how do we keep our operation going? What can we put in place? What are the legal changes we need to take into consideration now? What are the environmental changes? What new problems do we need to solve now? What opportunities are starting to open up? And then organizations started moving to the return phase. So there was some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. And the return phase was more about, wait a minute, things aren't normal, but is this the new normal or is it still changing? Still lots of questions to be answered, still a lot of uncertainty, but at least things were felt like they were moving forward. And a lot of the leader's role at this point was about sort of team building, getting people back together, even though they might not physically be back together. And now some organizations, thankfully, are looking at the renew phase. How do we move from survival to actually thriving in this new environment? What can we do differently? How can we really take advantage of what's going on? And this is where it's really key as leaders, we start to get some team alignment. We say, right, what are we focusing on now? Because it may be quite different from what we were focusing on before. How do we take advantage of the digital changes and the digital transformation that's happening? And this is what we want to talk about in this workshop. And there are 2 key aspects we want to talk about. One is courage at this stage, and using your courage and the difference between bravery and recklessness, and also want to talk about purpose and how to get the team really behind your organization's purpose and really aligned behind your team purpose.
Angela, before we dive into the renew phase, I just want to share a reflection on the roadmap. So, you know, we've been using this with organizations for, since March, really. And one of the things that's really struck me on webinars is when we've asked people where they see themselves, you know, some people see themselves in stabilize, And whilst others were seeing themselves in sustain, and then as we moved further through the process, some people saw themselves in sustain, whilst others felt they were in return. And more recently, a few people have said they see themselves in renew, which is one of the reasons why we feel now is the right time to be presenting this webinar. But what strikes me is that people moving at different levels, and then some people feeling like, actually, oh, we're back in sustain, or oh gosh, we thought we were in return, but actually we're probably still sustaining, or sometimes even having to go way back and think, well, we need to steady the ship again, we need to stabilize. So yes, this is presented as a roadmap, and yes, it looks linear, but let's not forget that it's a winding road, and we're not always going to be going in a perfect straight line, and sometimes we're going to be taking steps back. But the advantage of the roadmap is that you can take the learning with you that you've learned from the progress so far. So if you do have to take a step back, you're better equipped and you're more resilient to move forward at pace to work your way through the roadmap and move towards renew.
Absolutely, Joe. And what this does help you do is work out where you are in the process, and so what you need to do at that moment. And Joe, that's a beautiful segue into what I want to talk about next, which is a curve that a lot of people will be familiar with. Now, this is a curve that's been used on every change management workshop I've ever been on or I've ever run myself. And it's the typical emotional curve of the ups and downs of change. Now, normally when we've done change management workshops or we've been helping organizations manage their change, there's been a sort of start and an end point. There's been, it's been a project, whereas now it's kind of all, no one's quite sure where the end point is or what it will look like or when that will happen. So it's worth bearing in mind that all of us are going to be somewhere on this change curve at any point in time, whatever stage we are on that roadmap. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And what is really important that we're going to talk about on this workshop is when you get your team really aligned behind your purpose and really supporting each other, it helps you all, to stay above the line on this and recognize when some people have gone below it and to help them out. So yeah, thanks for that segue, Joe. And yeah, do be aware of your own emotional response and where you're at and where your team's at too. Okay, again, if you've been in our webinars, you'll recognize Leadership 4.0 and the 5 H's of leading in head, heart, health, habit, and history. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you haven't read the white paper yet, then absolutely download it. We'll remind you again at the end. But the two aspects I really want to focus on here today are the head and the heart. Now, when we talk about leading in head, we're talking about what you need to be as a leader in terms of bringing sort of, your analytics to it, the strategic thinking, the cognitive thinking, the analysis, the goal setting, the target setting, and so on. And then what are you bringing in terms of leading in heart? So really engaging people, really motivating people, the emotional side of leadership. And what we found in our workshops is that people tend towards one than the other. So yes, we're a mixture of both. Of course we are, we're human. But people tend to be more one than the other. Which do you tend to go to? So I want to hold the question in your head of which are you more like? Are you more head than heart or more heart than head? And then I've got a supplementary question for you. If you were to look at your teams, would you say they were more head in terms of how they operate or more heart? And we've got a poll for you. And we're gonna make, it's a forced choice. So we just want to know, which are you most like, which best describes you? Are you and your team more head than heart or more heart than head? And there are 4 options. And it'll be very interesting to see which ones you choose. If you need more clarity, then ask us in the chat box. Interesting, votes are coming through.
I've just been chatting away and I've been on mute. I was just saying we'll give it a few more seconds for the rest of the votes to come in. Once we've done this, once I've finished doing the tech side over here, I'll send a link in the chat box so that you can download the white paper. So you'll be able to access that via our website. You just need to pop your email address in and it will get sent to you. So I think just about everybody will have voted. So I will end the poll now and we can see the results.
Interesting.
There you go.
That's very interesting, isn't it? That everyone on the call today feels that their team is more heart than head.
Yeah, yeah.
And a mix of leaders. Very interesting.
And if anyone wants to type into the comment box what their motivation was for their response, it would be great to see. I mean, I don't know about your views on our team at the Innovation Beehive, Angela, but I'd say we probably come into leader head team heart as well. I mean, thinking about Mark and his sort of focus on and drive and determination to think about process, and I mean, he's in the middle of writing a Innovation Beehive ways of working. And I think I'm probably fairly head as well, but I do think we have heart-minded people in the team.
I love it. Yeah, I get
Heart-minded. Can you be heart-minded?
That's a whole new concept there, Joe. Whole new concept.
Yeah.
But in some teams, you find that people, teams sometimes feel that they have to bring more of their heart out because their leader's more heart, or more of their head because their leader is more that. And that's what's encouraged. Whereas in other teams, you find that the opposite. It's like, oh, the leader's doing all the head stuff. Great, we could focus on the other stuff. So it's yeah, team dynamics are obviously a lot more complicated than the 4 options we've given here. But thank you for doing that. Keep that in mind as we go through, and I'm going to pick up at the end what that might mean in terms of how you use our tools and how you deliver them. So thank you very much for sharing. Okay, the question we asked right at the beginning when we advertised this webinar, well, what do Extinction Rebellion and Horatio Nelson have in common? Well, 2 very different people, can I say people? Collections of people. And they're just 2 things that came on my radar very recently. And obviously one thing they've got in common is both been very prominent in Trafalgar Square in 2020, which is more than the rest of us can say. I don't know how, I think I've been to London once this year and that's it. But I just found it really interesting as I delved deeper into what motivated these people were 2 things actually that really relate to how a leader needs to be in the renew phase. And one was a really clear sense of purpose and what people were prepared to do when they really believed in that sense of purpose. So Extinction Rebellion, obviously, are about saving the planet. They've got a real purpose. They're prepared to glue themselves to the roads. They're prepared to get arrested. I think I read this morning, 680 arrests so far for Extinction Rebellion in London. They're prepared to go a long way for what they believe in. Horatio Nelson lost his life for doing what he believed in. Now, he had a massive sense of duty to his country and defending his country. And his set of beliefs were very much that, it was an honourable death to die for your country. And so his values, his beliefs, his whole purpose were really aligned, just as with Extinction Rebellion as well. And what they both have in common as well is this real preparedness to really go all the way, to really, as I say, well, Nelson laid down his life, Extinction Rebellion laying down in the roads, and I don't know how prepared a lot of them are to go. And I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that this is what you do with your team and this is how far you take it, but it's how far will your team go if they have a shared sense of purpose. So let's talk about how we do that and why it's important. So here's something else that you'll recognize, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Beautiful visual there, thank you, Joe. So in previous webinars and in the white paper, we talk about what do your team need and what do you need personally along this roadmap. And right at the beginning, people were, you know, just worried about their physical safety. You know, have I got food on the table? Do you remember back in March, you'd go shopping and there was no toilet roll, there was no pasta, there was, you know, I'd come home and I'd say, right, I bought what I could. Yeah, I'll leave your creativity to cook something delicious. You know, that's how it was. You know, we were literally losing sleep and really having to forage for food. We've moved on from that now, and we're really, you know, conscious about safety, about wearing our masks when we're in the supermarket, we're masked when we're close to people, keeping our distance when we're outdoors. And as we've, you know, moved from, you know, towards survival to return, there's also a sense of, wait a minute, I really need to get that sense of connection back with people. You know, how many Zoom meetings do we have, or phone calls? You know, I've phoned my colleagues more than I used to, just to connect with them again, because I haven't seen them for a while, you know? So we're moving up to the sense of, right, I really need to have a sense of connection, a sense of community. And again, this is what being in a team, being at work brings to a lot of people. It also brings self-esteem. So, you know, achieving in your job, you know, brings you more than just, oh, tick, I've done a job. Is you know, I feel good about achieving a really good piece of work. So again, we're bringing that to it. But what we're also starting to look at when we you know, move to renew is what we've seen is people's just questioning everything. You know, why did I used to spend 4 hours a day commuting to and from work? Why can I not just work from home full time now? You know, what am I really missing? And also just having time to stop and think, you know, we've literally been thinking about life and death. What do I actually want from my life? What do I actually want from work? And more people are asking this and looking for a sense of purpose. So again, how can you as leaders help people find that sense of purpose and make sure it's aligned with the job, with the organization, and with your team? So I love that visual. I would not want to be there, but I'm really intrigued as to where they're going. And just the idea that this group of people are prepared to, you know, prepared to do this. It always astonishes me what humans are prepared to do when they really want to do something. So leaders, how do you develop your shared sense of purpose? Well, let's start with what do we mean by purpose. Now, those who've read your Simon Sinek or watched the TED Talks, and I encourage you to do, because they're very uplifting and very insightful. But he very much simplifies it to the what, how, and why. So if you look at right, let's look at organisations. If you look at sort of what they do. It's you know, it's kind of interesting on one level. How they do it again takes another depth, but why they do it is what really emotionally engages you. So let me give you an example, because it will explain it so much better. So I've got here an example of a homeless charity, and they say on their website, we're a charity for homeless people. We're the national charity for homeless people. So yeah, that's very good, very worthy. Thank you very much. How they do it: they help people directly out of homelessness and campaign for changes needed to solve it together. Now that's great, isn't it? You think, oh good, yeah, they really take action to help homeless people. So I'm getting more engaged as I read this. And then the why, they say, together we will end homelessness. Now, I love that, because immediately I'm like, wow, that's impressive. That it's not just about, you know, giving someone a cup of tea or just helping them in the moment. Is, no, we're on a mission. You know, like you saw that trail of people through the snow. I don't know where they were heading. I don't know why they were doing it, but they were on a mission. And this is, what really gets you out of bed in the morning. You get out of bed to end homelessness. You really feel you're involved in something bigger. It appeals to your sense of purpose. So if you think of self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and your sense of belonging, that together we're going to do this.
What I love about that one in particular is that not only is it an ambitious, bold moonshot, to end homelessness, but their why is also inviting you in, because it's saying together. And just adding that word, it's not we will end homelessness, but together we will end homelessness. So their why is actually saying more than their how and their what, because they're saying, actually, we know this isn't something we can do alone. So join us.
Really inviting you
really
in,
powerful. Yeah.
And saying you can play your part in this. Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. So how do you kind of get that engagement? Well, let's I'm going to give them a quiz, Joe. I want them to guess in the chat box who I'm describing here. So so this is a profit-making organization, and you will have heard of it. I'd like to know at what point you recognize who it is. So we stand for the timeless pursuit of adventure. Freedom for the soul. Now I read that, I want to be part of that immediately, yeah? Who doesn't? Do you at this point know who we're talking about?
We've got some guesses coming in. So someone has said Expedia. It's a good thought, good thought. Virgin Atlantic, maybe, there's another one coming in.
Oh, yeah. All right, so we're getting a taste. How about this? So that was their why. This is their how. We're going to do it through building our legend and leading our industry through innovation, evolution, and emotion.
Another suggestion has just come in, Apple, maybe.
Oh.
Yeah. We've had Aston Martin have come in as a suggestion.
Oh, nice, nice. Getting close, getting close.
We're getting warm there.
You are getting
it's
warm.
A bit of a hint.
You are warm. It's actually Harley Davidson.
Zach has made a few suggestions, and given that Zach turns up variously on various motorbikes, I'm quite surprised he didn't work that out sooner.
Well, I've got to be honest, if I read this, Harley Davidson manufactures and sells, and I'm bored already. I'm just not into motorcycles, okay? Their what is, well, it's dull to me because it's immediately read Harley Davidson, I go, all right, motorcycles, I'm switched off. But because I'm pulled in by the why and the how, I was so intrigued to know who is this, and even now, so I read that and I go, they're leading edge, innovative, distinctive. I'm interested. So although I will probably not buy a motorcycle myself, riding experiences, well, that could be a good present for someone I know who loves pursuit of adventure, who loves freedom for the soul. I'm drawn in, even though the brand sort of, doesn't mean much to me. So my question to everyone out there is, what is your organization's why bringing people in? Does it really invite your team in? And if it doesn't, there are still things you can do about it. So let's look at what tools we can use. So as we said, we need a clear sense of purpose, we need a shared sense of purpose. And here's a tool that you're very welcome to use, that how do you develop the shared purpose in your team? So
just to say, I'll be sending people a PDF of this so that they can use it.
You have to quickly scribble it all down now.
Workshops, yeah.
Okay, well, one way of doing it is take your organization's, what is their mission statement? What is their why that's on the website? And get your team to talk about, right, what really excites them about it? What makes them proud to be part of this? And then looking more deeply as what do we do as a team that actually enables this to happen? What is our part in this? We're probably a cog in a big bit of machinery. What do we do that enables this? And what else could we do? And a lovely question that I like to ask teams is, well, what would happen if you didn't exist? Because that really takes you to your very core why. and what you're bringing to the party. What would happen if you didn't exist? And it's always worrying when people go, oh, I think it'd all be fine. But how do you make what you do absolutely essential to what your customers need, whether internal customers or external? And a really key question that really helps people think is, who do you impact and how do you make their lives better? You know, everyone's providing some sort of product or service, whether it's a physical product, whether it's something tangible, or whether it's something more emotional, whether it helps to make someone's life easier, whether it helps them do something quicker, whether it helps them do something better. What are you bringing to help this to happen? Now, we been working with Menzies Aviation, and working with their teams, you say, so what do you do? What's the purpose of your team? And what they do is they do all the behind the scenes stuff at airports. So they say, well, we're baggage handlers. That's what we do. And they kind of leave the discussion like that. We're baggage handlers. But when you really help them to think about, well, who do you impact? How do you make lives better? They realize, actually, us doing our jobs brilliantly and getting it absolutely right means that the planes fly on time. That means people get to their destination on time. That means that the business person turns up with their luggage and doesn't have to quickly go to the shops to buy a clean shirt for their big presentation the next day. Or it means that that the kid that left their teddy bear on the flight actually it turns up at their hotel even before they do. You know, there are so many ways that they make people's lives better. And doing that gets them so emotionally connected into why they need to do a brilliant job. Because when they don't, it really impacts people negatively. And when they do, they know that they've made a massively positive impact to people's lives. So really encourage you to do that.
Can I just chip in something, Angela? So one of the things that's worth noting is not all organisations have a clearly defined and articulated why. Part of the benefit of using a tool like this is you can begin to kind of work out what the how and the what of your organisation means to you and your team. So if your mission statement is, a sort of dull, functional what and how piece, as many organizations' mission statements are, well, that doesn't stop you from defining a why for your team, because you can do an activity like this, and there are other activities you can do as well to really begin to understand and dig into what is the why and why do we do what we do. Even if the rest of the organization isn't subscribed to that, it doesn't mean that you and your team can't be united behind it. Flip side of that, of course, is, if you do have any influence over senior leaders in the business, tell them you need a why for the organization, because not only is it good for your team, but it's also good for the rest of the organization and your customers.
Absolutely. Good point, Joe. Okay. Edgar Schein. Have you all heard of Edgar Schein? Whether you have, you haven't, he's probably the godfather of culture. And we love metaphors, Innovation Beehive, and Edgar certainly clearly did as well. And he says culture is like a lily pond. So what did he mean by that? Well, he said there are things that he called artifacts. So there are things that are visible. So the lilies and the lily pads on top of the pond. So what is visible about what your team does or what your organization does? Whether it's your logo, your decor, how you operate, the paperwork you produce, the policies you produce, the output of your team. What do people actually see your team doing? And then there are things that are just beneath the surface. So the roots of the lilies. What's happening just beneath that superficial level that people can see? Well, they're your values and your beliefs. And they might be visible. You might have explicitly stated what they are as an organization or as a team, and you may not. but they'll certainly be visible in your behaviours, which is why it's absolutely critical that your values and beliefs are aligned with your behaviours. But deeper than that are underlying assumptions. So what is going on culturally that actually you might not even be conscious of? You know, what's going that's actually producing the behaviours on top, what you see on the top, right below the surface. And one of the things that the purpose slide you saw earlier and the tool does is helps make those things conscious, you know, so that, because the thing is, unless all these are congruent, you won't be functioning at your most productive self. As a team, you won't be working in harmony. And as we know, things in the environment are driving a lot of change at the moment, a lot of it digital. And things out in the environment are the things that you can't really control and that you've got to react to. Now, if you've got your underlying assumptions, your purpose, your culture absolutely aligned to your values and beliefs, then it means that whatever's happening externally, your people, your team will actually display the behaviors that you want them to display. They use their initiative to respond to all this. So let's look at another way of aligning your team, and that's around values. So as Joe said, this will be shared out, but here's one way of getting your team to look at values. So again, many organizations already have explicit values. So if you take those and say, ask people, what does it mean for them personally? What does it mean for them in their role right now? What does it mean for us as a team? And what would others see when we're living this value? So what are the lilies that people will see? And if you get your team to do it individually and then share, it'll be very interesting to see how much of it is aligned. So when people say, what does this mean for me personally? How aligned is that with what is happening in their role? And how aligned is it with what everybody else says as well? You're going to have some very interesting discussions if you use this, so allow plenty of time for it. But it's a very interesting one to do yourself as well, is how aligned are my values with my role right now and how we're having to work in the current climate. Now, again, I know Joe's going to jump in and say, you might not have explicit values in your organization, in which case, well, again, there are lots of tools to get your teams to say what they are. But if you've done your purpose already, that's one way you can say, so what are the underpinning values that we need to hold dear in order to deliver that? So get your team.
Yeah, I just at that point as well. So thinking about that lily pond piece, you know, the second level was about the values, the beliefs, and what was the other word?
Attitude.
Attitudes. Thank you. And what's interesting to me is the word values in an organizational context is sometimes taken to mean the statements that we apply to those values. So, you know, one of our values at the Innovation Beehive is we love our clients, and that drives us to do these webinars and, you know, to try and stay connected and things like that. But actually, that phrase is like a lily, isn't it? It's one of the things that people can see. It's the thing that's visible. It's at the second level when the value starts to actually manifest in the way we behave and the things that we do and the way we interact with each other or our clients, that you get into the sort of the meat of what that phrase actually signifies. And that's what this template really helps to do, is to understand, as you say, you know, what's going on further down underneath the surface level. But what I would say to people is, don't mistake a phrase for the value itself, because the value is how it's manifested in the organization, not the statement itself. And, you know, people can spend months and months and months wordsmithing phrases that are going to sound really good in a marketing brochure, but actually don't mean anything in the organization. far better to leave the wordsmithing to one side and focus on actually living and breathing the values that your people genuinely hold dear. And this sort of template is really useful for that.
It's really good because it gets everybody thinking about it and gives you some structure for it. I was looking at the NHS's values recently, and they one of them was respect and dignity, and I thought, how, you know, and then they had to define it, and it's again all these sort of words everyone's got a slightly different definition for. They all look slightly different in any organization. Number of times we run leadership workshops and you say, what is leadership? And again, everybody's got a slightly different definition of what it means and what it means to them in their role. And it's the quality of the discussions that you have that's really important. And no one's put in the chat box yet, but I was expecting it. I was expecting someone to say, and what happens if people say, well, no, I'm not aligned to that value at all. This is where you need to really have the discussion, because most explicit values, there's something in them that you can relate to. So, you know, respect and dignity, there's something in there that everyone can relate to. And there's usually one about customers, that there's something that people relate to, but you'll find different people relating to different parts of it. And the key is, you know, use the values to actually get people to, you know, like use the respect and dignity and say, right, well, let's make sure as we have our discussion that we're using that value, and so on. So you can have a lot of fun playing with the values, but the key is aligning them for everybody. So making sure everybody can relate to all of the values. And a really key part of it is, how are we going to challenge each other if we're not living them? So really getting your team to contract with each other about, you know, how are we going to bring this to life? How will others see us when we're living this? And how are we going to challenge each other, you know, if we're not doing them? So remember I asked at the beginning about head versus heart, and made you choose about which you were. So we had a mixture of leaders who felt they were more head or more heart, but everybody felt that their team was more heart, certainly at the moment. So I'd just like to think about how you go about this, because sometimes when you go deep on purpose and values, you are really going deep into, you know, the core of someone, of what's really important to them. And it can be quite emotional discussions. So those who said they were more heart and their team's more heart, you might find these conversations get very emotional. So, you know, make sure you allow time for them, and it's not just a 10-minute thing that you do at the end of a Zoom meeting. If you feel you're more head than heart, you might approach this in a very logical way of, right, we've got to fill this form in like this, and we've got to do it by this time, and what have you. So again, you want people to really, really spend time and tap into their emotions to explore this. So again, kind of challenge yourself. Am I doing this in the best possible way for people to be able to express themselves? You will have, again, we force you to make a decision. So you will have head people in your team, and you'll also, you know, everyone will have a combination of each. So again, people will say, well, why are we doing this? So certainly people who are more head than heart will go, why are we doing this? What's it? I've got enough to do. I don't want to be talking about my emotions or talking about my purpose. So tying them into, you know, why it's important and how it's going to help you all work together, how it's going to help people's mental health as well as their physical health. You know, they're going to know it's important as well, and making it psychologically safe for everyone, especially if they're sort of a very heart person, am I allowed to say that, who might not be used to expressing their feelings. It's making it psychologically safe for everyone to be able to talk about this. So please do take that on board. So is that enough on purpose for now?
I think so. We've actually had a question come through around values. And I think I'm going to get this right. So someone raised up a point to show loyalty. If you in order to show loyalty to your leader, you may sometimes have to do something that goes against your own values. What should you do in that circumstance? So I think what the person is asking there is, if you've got your own set of values, because we have organizational values and we have our own values, and then a leader asks you to do something that you feel goes against your own values. So what would we be doing in that situation, from your perspective, Angela?
I think I'd want to know a specific there, but I mean, you can still be true to your values, because sometimes, you know, in the past I've been asked to, could you present this, and I think, well, I don't quite agree with that, and one of my values is honesty. So but I find I can share it. I go, right, okay, I need to do it this way because I'm supporting someone who can't turn up, and I need to present this. But I'll just share it in my own way, and I'll share it as, you know, some people take this attitude, others take, so I will put the other side to it as well. So I'll be true to both, if you like. So I'll be there supporting my friend, being loyal, while also, you know, opening up another side to it, so that I can still sleep at night, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think there's a few things that I would consider in that situation, and they're on a sort of sliding scale of extremity. So first thing would be, I'd probably want to try and get more information from the leader in question, about, oh wow, okay, we've actually had an example come through, passing on a person's personal details so someone else could hack into their phone. That sounds like quite an extreme thing you're being asked to do, which probably has legal implications as well as personal value implications. So in that case, I'm far be it from me to tell you what to do in that situation if that situation's a real one. But I would probably be questioning I'd be going to the extreme that I was about to get to, which would be to question whether this is the right organization for me, if that kind of request is being put to me. But at the other side of that scale, where I'm in an organization that I feel is aligned to my values and I'm being asked to do something that seems to jar, then I probably want to have a conversation and begin to seek to understand the motivation for the request, perhaps have a dialogue with the leader to see if there's another way we can make this happen. If I'm being asked to do something that is fundamentally against my principles and against my values, then I'd be asking questions about whether I'm, as I say, whether I'm in the right organization. And of course, that's a spectrum. And, you know, the one side is take it, ask questions, dig into the issue, dig into the challenge, and see if we can find a better solution that is more aligned to the values. The other extreme is, this organization probably isn't right for me, possibly too much to change it, so I'm probably not going to stick around for very much longer, you know. And I think they are the kind of tough questions that we do have to ask ourselves when we start to talk about purpose. And they're the kind of tough questions that we need to be asking about potential recruits as well. You know, does this person align to the values of the organization? And we need to be asking that about potential organizations that we're looking to work at as well. You know, does this organization align with my values? And if it doesn't, then I'm probably not going to last here. So is it actually the right place for me to go and get a job at?
I'm absolutely in agreement, Joe. I would also say that I know you went to the extreme there. What I find sometimes is someone's asked me to do something that's very close to where I draw the line, just a very assertive no, and don't ask me to do anything that's you know, that's borderline illegal or unethical again, and then just stop it there. So you don't even get into a negotiation about it. So it's kind of it's a no, and a definite no, and you can just, you know, just walk away.
Absolutely. This actually put me in mind of something that happened between you and I, actually, Angela. So a
Oh
few
dear, have I
months
asked you
ago,
to be unethical?
no, it's all quite the opposite. So I remember I posted something maybe on Instagram or on our Facebook page for the Innovation Beehive, and there was something in the language that didn't quite work for you. I can't remember the specifics, but you sent me a message about it, and you sort of said that it made you feel a bit uncomfortable when you read it. And then when I read back over it, I thought, oh my God, I hadn't realized how that could be interpreted. So actually, sometimes when you address the issue, when you address the discomfort that you're feeling, it actually enables the other person to see that they've made a mistake, or they've kind of gone too far, or not lived the values. And it was really helpful to have that kind of positive challenge, because it meant that the business was better for it, and I was better for it.
Yeah, and hopefully I did it in a way that didn't make you feel defensive. I just said to you, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I do
Yeah.
remember, I can't remember what the wording was, but I just
No, I
remember.
can't either. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was a good exchange.
But it
Yeah.
was one I wanted you to think about it rather than let's get in a fight about this. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So it's the way you approach it as well.
yeah. So making sure people save face as well is really important.
Mm.
Okay, so enough about purpose for now. The other aspect of Horatio Nelson and Extinction Rebellion that I wanted to talk about was about risk taking. And as I've said, that not expecting you or your teams to be lying in the road or laying down your lives, but in times of change like this, when the sands are shifting all the time, the rug's being pulled, we might have to take a few risks. We might have to do things quite differently from what we've done before. So I personally wouldn't do that. I don't know if that's your kind of thing, Joe, but I'm going, oh, not me, not me. But what I'm going to ask you is, what are you up for in terms of risk taking? So we've got a poll. We've got another poll, Joe. I'd like to know, which of these are you up for? So we've got some parkour there. We've got horse jumping. We've got parachuting, and we've got presenting. Now you might feel that it's quite bizarre that I'm putting presenting up there, but I own a book called Death Comes Third, and Death Came Third, and it was all about making presentations, and the title comes from a survey that went out about what are people most scared of, and people put presenting as their number one, with death third. I can't remember what was number two, but it's amazing.
Folks, I've just realised that you can only select one option for this poll. So sorry about that.
Right. The idea was that you get
yeah, it was my mistake. So I'm hoping you've all selected the one that you're most up for, or the one that maybe the one you fear the most. But feel free to type into the chat if you would be up for all of them, or some of them, or which one you definitely wouldn't be up for. So yeah, sorry about that, Angela. My mistake with the poll.
That's quite all right. You're forgiven. Interesting.
So I think just about everyone's probably answered that. Feel free to type into the chat as well. Put a couple of comments in the chat as well. So we'll share the results of the poll and then talk through the chat stuff as well.
So most people parachuted. Do you know what? That's the one I would go for.
Really?
I look at that, and maybe maybe it's a reaction to having been in lockdown and not getting out of the house as much as I'd like. That the thought of that freedom would be lovely. Quite a few put parkour. Okay, that frightens the life out of me.
I actually I follow some folks on Instagram who do parkour, and I feel slightly nervous when I'm watching their videos.
Yeah. Well, my son at one point said, "Yeah, that looks like loads of fun. I think I'm going to give it a go." And my facial reaction must have said a lot, because he said, "Oh, don't give me a lecture." He said, because at 18, I did a parachute jump. I've been down, black runs skiing. I've had flying lessons. Um, I'm totally cool about going potholing and what's the one where you go down a cliff?
Abseiling.
Abseiling. Yeah, totally cool about all that. And he said, so what's your problem with parkour? And I said, what happens, what do you land on? What happens if you get it wrong? Whereas, parachuting, you've got a second parachute to open. The horse jumping, there are precautions that you can take. So you have a horse that's familiar with it. You have a horse that you're familiar with. You wear a hat and so on. There are things you can do to protect yourself. Same with parachuting. You have an idea of where you're going to land. Other people know you're doing it. Some of the parkour, they do it on their own. There's no one there to phone an ambulance if something happens.
We've had an interesting comment come through from Paul, who says, I did a parachute jump 18 months ago for charity after many years of believing it was a sin to leave a serviceable aircraft in flight. And what I think is interesting about that is it actually loops back to the lily pond and the underlying assumptions. So, sometimes we have these deep-rooted fears or assumptions or preconceptions about things. And, we need to overcome those in order to actually have the courage to do the thing. So it's not always about fear. Sometimes it's about, what our mother thinks about what we're doing or what the RAF would think about what we're doing.
Brilliant, because that's one of the things that I want to highlight about risk taking. God, it's like Joe just give me a segue every time. That a lot of these things you might be up for, as long as you knew there was, someone had done a risk assessment and there was they'd thought about the safety. So you might not be up for, no one went for presenting, did they? Maybe that's just because it just looked a bit too boring and there was only one choice. But you might not be up for meetings anymore. A lot of people now are saying, no, I'm too scared to go into the office. I'm working productively at home. I'm not even going in. Other people might be, yeah, I'll go in as long as there's social distancing, as long as there's mask wearing, as long as everybody is doing it. And this is the difference between, absolute recklessness and bravery, because they say there's a fine line, don't they, between bravery and stupidity. But there's so much you can do to make things safer. So again, it's a question to hold in your mind, what are you up for when it comes to renewing your organization, renewing your team? I now have to click back on the slide so it moves. Now, you'll recognize this as Stephen Covey's circle of influence, circle of control. And we use it a lot when we're talking about sort of managing yourself, when we're talking leadership workshops, about managing your emotions and so on. So for all of us, there's a certain amount of control that we have in our lives. So the key thing that we can control is how we behave and how we think and how we feel. And the more you grow your emotional intelligence, your self-awareness and so on, the greater control you have over that. And then beyond that, there are things that we can influence. So you can influence your team, you can influence what happens in your organization, and so on. And then there might be things beyond that you're concerned about, but you don't have a lot of influence over. And I know Mox talked about this in the previous slides when we were talking about, survival and your team surviving and your organization surviving, is one way to really look after your mental well-being is just focus on what you can control and what you can influence. That in itself is an important lesson, but I'd also like us to think about, okay, one of the key things that Stephen Covey talked about is if you just stay in your small circle of control, then you're not growing yourself, you're not growing your team. In fact, you will shrink. Now, I'm sure all of us have had to learn new skills certainly digital ones, like how to press the, you know, where to find the unmute button on your, when you're on a Zoom call and so on. And lots of us have you know, had to learn new skills, new ways of doing things. Now, as your organization is moving to renew phase, it be time to, yes, look at new ways of working, also look at new markets. You might be looking at new products, you'll be looking at new ways of marketing your current products and so on. There's going to be a lot of risk taking and a lot of change. And a question that I would ask is where are you at? You know, where are you at on the strategic roadmap? Where are you at personally? And where's your team at? And as Joe helpfully said, this impacts on other people too. So you might be up for, right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to remortgage the house. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. But who else is impacted? And where are they at the moment? Remember our emotional curve before? Where are all your stakeholders at in different ways? Because you will need support at this stage, because you might be taking small risks, you might be taking big ones, but the more support you've got behind you, so the more your team is behind you and aligned, the more likely you are to succeed. And of course, as an innovation company, we encourage risk taking in terms of prototyping. Take the risk early, test it out, learn from it, apply it. So we're always encouraging people to try something new, try it out, but do it in a controlled way. So, you know, make sure you've done your risk assessment first and you're wearing your hard hat, or you've got your second parachute ready, or whatever. So I've got one more thing I'd like to share with you, is that, right, I've given you lots to think about, whether you're a head person, a heart person, wherever your team's at, and some tools that you could think about using to really align your team. But I just wanted to share with you something that you can do immediately. Now, I know we've talked in the past on webinars about it's important to check in with your team as well as checking up on them. So emotionally, you know, where are they at, how are they? And somebody has said to us, yeah, but how do you make the conversation different? And when you say, how are you, to somebody, and they say, yeah, I'm fine, but you kind of know they're not. It's like, how can you have a deeper conversation? So here's one way of doing it is just go deeper and get personal and say, right, what did you do that you're most proud of last week? Or what aspect of your work did you enjoy most last week? You know, what's really motivating you right now? One, you'll help that person connect with their purpose of why they're doing their job and what they're enjoying about it. It'll help you know what's motivating them at the moment, because it might be slightly different from what it normally was. They might have moved on. They might be doing something, they might be doing two people's jobs at the moment because somebody else is still furloughed. You know, what are they getting out of their job at the moment? So I'll leave those questions with you. So at your next check-in, ask a question like this. What are they proud of? What are they enjoying at the moment? So tap into that passion that people have got, because that's where the purpose is. Tap into their why they're doing it, and that's where you'll get more from your team and more support from your team. So it's better for them and it's better for you. So at this point, can I hand over to Joe to remind you of one of the things you can do going forward is make sure you've got one of these white papers.
Absolutely, thank you. So Angela, thank you so much for that fabulous webinar. I think we've all moved our thinking forward somewhat on the roadmap through uncertainty into the renew phase. Yeah, we've got this white paper on leadership for disruptive times. And I've sent you the link to it in the chat box, and I'll send you the link to that in a follow-up email as well. I'll also send you a recording of today's webinar. So if you had to dip out at all, you'll be able to catch up on what you missed, and feel free to share that with your team, with other leaders in the business, however you want. But it just falls to me to say again, thank you to Angela, and thank you to all of you for your contributions on the webinar today. So have a great rest of the day, everybody. We're giving you back 3 minutes to your day. So Angela, again, well done for being on time. Perfect. And look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.